Hey folks, WWDC 2025 is just around the corner and I'll be in the Cupertino area again. I've got a jam-packed schedule planned for WWDC week. Throughout the week, you'll find me at One More Thing or Community Kit, two of the best community events that are happening that week. But I especially want to let you know that on Monday, June 9th at 4 p.m. Pacific, I'll be recording a very special milestone episode. We're hitting our 200th episode of Empower Apps at Community Kit. We'll be talking about everything announced at the keynote and the State of the Union, and I may have a very special guest. Be sure to sign up as space is limited. The link is provided in our show notes. I'll be also hosting panels and helping folks with server-side Swift questions at One More Thing, and even doing a live demo of Bushel at the Community Kit Indie Fair on Wednesday. Speaking of Bushel, version 2.1 is out, and to celebrate both the new release and WWDC, I'll be offering 50% off annual subscriptions for new customers till the end of WWDC week, so definitely take advantage of this as soon as you can. With the new macOS betas dropping soon, there's never been a better time to streamline your workflow with Bushel. Links to all these events and more will be in the show notes below. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoy today's episode with Peter. Welcome to another episode of Empower Apps. I'm your host, Leo Dion. Today, I'm joined by Peter Witham once again. Peter, thank you for making your 400th appearance on the show.
And I only look a day over 38, right?
That's true. For people who don't listen to this podcast, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. And thank you, Leo, for having me back again. Always look forward to this and chatting with you. So, my name is Peter Witham. I'm primarily an iOS developer, although I also work with Android and React Native, but Swift is my thing because I have the Compile Swift podcast is what I'm primarily known for. Shout out to my co-host on that, Jeff. That's probably where folks have heard my weird Texas accent before.
Texas accent, I like it. So, for people who are subscribed to the newsletter and follow me on social, I will be in California once again for WWDC. There's a bunch of events going on, including leading a panel and giving a talk and talking about Bushel, but I will be recording a special 200th episode live from Community Kit. So you'll definitely want to check that out. Since Peter won't be available, I figure now is as good of a time as ever to go over the year and what we're thinking when it comes to WWDC. I will also post a link to all the stuff so you can register there as well. And then it's been a heck of a year, like in the Apple space. Where do we begin? Not all good stuff, and I feel like I went over this in my year review of stuff that I was worried about, and it feels like it all kind of it's all come to a head. What's your thoughts about it?
Yeah, doesn't it? It has been a very up and down year, I think, since the last WWDC, right? So many things we could cover in both directions. I guess the one that stands out the most, and we'll get into the topics, but the failed promises maybe of AI that never really happened yet. And things like this, but I feel like it's not been one of the best years for Apple, and not necessarily all their fault, as we'll probably get into, but it's been a tough one.
Are you surprised by the AI stuff? Or are you like, no, I mean, like kind of the way Gruber described it, it's like they never really demoed anything. Um, like, is it that surprising? Or what part of you is shocked, I guess?
Yeah, I think, I'm always one of those people who, hey, whoever the company is, but especially Apple, don't give it to us until it's ready, right? And so therefore, if they don't feel it's ready, it's better to suffer the brief beating that you get from saying something will be here, and then putting it all over the website, and then pulling it back again. And I do feel that folks have been a little unfair. In the I mean, they did give us something, right? Not everything that it should have been. And hey, is that better than giving us something that was a complete disaster? I guess, there's that side that says Siri was never that great to begin with. Could it really have been any worse? But I mean, I'll take what I've got. I have been using some of the stuff on the Mac, for example. The like the writing services have been pretty good. Especially for folks like ourselves, where it's like, okay, give me a quick summary of this document for podcast notes and things like that, right? I'm not expecting miracles, and I feel it was okay. But I think it was the fact that it was really kind of sold to us as, hey, this is really going to bring your iPhone, your watch, those other platforms to life in a whole new way. And it sort of didn't. You know what I mean?
I mean, the iPhone 16, that was the selling point.
Yeah. And
I had the
like,
clip
yeah.
of Snoop and Jason Mahomes trying to sell you an iPhone 16 with AI. Like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they really pushed it.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, I don't think that those folks out there, who are putting these, lawsuits together about, hey, I bought this because of this and it didn't happen. It's kind of like, we all know Apple's got a lot of lawyers. Good luck with that. But because there is that thing of, well, they made you want to have it, but they didn't force you to get it. They just made you want it, which is what Apple is excellent at, right?
Yeah, it seems like it's a big hurdle for them to get wherever. I don't know what tools you use, but I've been using Claude and Cursor quite a bit, and they're a great fit. I don't I don't know how Apple is going to be able to compete with that. Like, it's almost feels like too late in a lot of ways for them to get into that space. Now there's rumors that they're going to provide SDKs for some models, but I don't know. I'm kind of like, we'll see. Also, will we get it in the version 0, or will we have to wait till version 2 and yada yada? You know how this stuff goes.
Yeah, yeah. We never get anything in version 0. Version 0 is just it's like the placeholder for the installer, right? Yeah. But I agree with you. Apple has to get it right next time, is what it comes down to in simple terms. And it's interesting because you mentioned about the SDKs. I was thinking about this the other day. Is this Apple's way of saying, you know, we couldn't deliver so far on the promise, but if we open it up, we're kind of sharing that responsibility with the developers, right? Maybe you can do it better than we can, which I feel like is kind of a smart thing. And yeah, oh, yeah, because I'm with you. I don't think they'll catch up with everybody else. They certainly won't, go speed ahead of everybody. Not now. But the best they can hope for is to catch up and continue to use their platforms to push their services, right? Which is what it comes down to.
And we know, like, they've been doing a lot with private cloud compute. They talked about that actually at the Server Side Swift conference and how that's a big deal. So I'm curious to see how they might let developers plug into that and be able to take advantage of it.
I think that is the one area where Apple does have a better chance than anybody of, you know, going ahead, sort of getting ahead of everybody else in the sense of, maybe I was going to say marketing spin should be, your privacy still comes first.
That has been a big selling point that they've tried to spearhead. So it'd be nice to see them.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd use them. If they'd have, I was all excited to use these services and that. And like I say, I've not been disappointed with what I got, just that I didn't get everything I was kind of hoping for.
So Yeah, I'm not expecting anything out of Siri this year. Um, Speaking of things that they keep trying to fix, iPad OS supposedly is gonna have a redesign this year. Yeah, like I don't know what they're trying to do with the iPad. I don't think I'm the target audience for it. I wish it was what I want it to be, but it just isn't. What's your thoughts on the redesign?
Yeah, it really does depend what they mean by redesign. For me,
So they're
I
looking at redesigning everything, right?
yeah, I mean, there's the visual side, right? Yeah, yeah, and like with everything Apple, usually when they redesign these things, it's nice. I like it, right? It is still something they're very good at. As far as redesigning, iPad OS functionally, I use my iPad every day. I don't, yes, of course, I'm a developer, right? It's not a replacement for my Mac, and that is not anything I expected it to be in that department. But the one thing for me that greatly disappoints me is every time I plug in an external display to my iPad, and it's like, okay, I got another big iPad on the screen, right? What value is that to me? And a lot of that does fall, I think, to developers of third-party apps because it depends how they use that experience. I'm not going to name and shame or anything like that, but there are some that are like, "Hey, you tried; it's pretty good," and there are others that are, frankly, are pretty terrible.
What do you use your iPad for?
Yeah, so yeah, engineering manager by trade is my thing. So it's a lot of the management type things, things like that. A classic example is the web browsers open a lot, right? And it's handy. Like I'm one of those unfortunate people. I have to use Teams every day, and greatly saddens me. Yeah, so it's like great. You know what? Let iPad handle Teams and Outlook and all that stuff, right? Yeah, so that's what that's for primarily, and it's because I'm used to full screen apps at this point. That's cool, but I'd like windowed apps when I plug in external display.
I
You know,
think like for me what burns me out about the iPad is just like you have to have the app in the foreground. Like copy and pasting between stuff is really hard. Like compared with the ability I have to like use my mouse and be able to drag stuff around on the Mac, like I
yeah,
just lose a lot of that on the iPad.
yeah, no,
And
exactly.
it makes it
That's
really difficult.
Yeah, that's why I want multiple windows, like true multitasking, which I know isn't, depends how you want to interpret what multitasking is. To me, multitasking is, like you said, multiple windows. It's the Mac experience for me. You hit on a really good example of pain, actually. The copy and the paste and that kind of feels like Stage Manager, that thing that I never use, and immediately turn off on everything, was kind of like, isn't this just a fancy clipboard? Because it kind of feels like that.
So there was a rumor about like being able to do more stuff on the iPhone. Um, so I bought myself one of these portable monitors. Have you
Oh,
seen
how
these
do you
before?
like that? Yeah,
It was like
yeah.
$50 at Best Buy. And I was like, okay, let's see what happens when I hook this up to my iPhone. And I was like trying to do it in portrait. You can't even do it in portrait mode. Even though the iPhone is portrait, it displays it like portrait, but in the middle of the
Oh
landscape
no,
display.
no.
And so like it only works if the iPhone is in landscape and then it fills up the screen because like oh I wonder if I could like take my iPhone to a coffee shop with a display and a keyboard and just start writing. I was just kind of curious and yeah, it was like it's like stuff like that that's just those paper cuts that like
Yeah,
yeah
yeah, and
make the
actually,
experience annoying.
it's funny because I had read these reports about this the possible enhancements to using an external display, and I got excited too. I'm like, oh, great. Because I remember years ago, I can't think of who made it. Maybe it was Motorola. There was that phone that you could put in the back of a dock. It was kind of like the Nintendo Switch thing. You put the phone in, and then boom, you got a computer, right? So I was like, if I could do that, that'd be great. But yeah, you sort of nailed the problem, which is okay. There's always something that makes it not work, and I get it. It's not necessarily Apple's fault, but it sort of is because with these huge phones, yeah, I mean, of all the apps that I can think of that I can use in landscape mode, fraction of them, and certainly not the home screen. My gosh, I used to love having my iPhone in landscape mode when you could do landscape, and it's like you made the phone bigger and you took it away. What's the deal? You know? Yeah, yeah.
um, I was gonna say something, but of course I forgot. Yeah, I don't know what their plan is for the new design. And that goes to the other big topic I wanted to talk about, that I've actually started looking into how to implement this properly in Bushel, but we're gonna get possibly year-based version numbers, which I find interesting. It's a little bit odd to do that for year 2026, but the idea would be is that this WWDC everything is going to be version 26 for next year, and there might even be a rumor that they might do that for the iPhones this year. We'll see. I kind of think the iPhone more than the OSs need to. It's weird at this point going with 17, 18, 19. It's kind of stupid, but um, yeah. What do you think of that?
So this came up pretty recently, right? And immediately I thought, okay, this is a good idea. And then I was like, oh, but that means we will miss out on the iPhone 20. And doesn't that just have a nice ring to it, right? We had the iPhone X, the iPhone 10, whichever camp you want to be in.
Also missed out on iPhone 9, so
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, so it's like what it's like they don't want to commit to these wonderfully magical numbers. But I'm actually in favor of the idea of the year because like so many of the tools we use in that now use the year number. But it does. You're right in that it also struck me. This doesn't really kind of work, right? It's because the way the cycles work, here we are in 2025. So WWDC just around the corner. We're going to get the new versions. We all know this, right? We're going to call them 26 because we'll get them in the fall. Okay, that's okay. That kind of makes sense because we know we're getting to see it way ahead of time. But from the perspective of the hardware, it feels a little bit like car model years, right?
that's exactly what they're going for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
The idea would be is that anything but the budget phone would be for the next year, and then the budget
exactly.
phone,
It's like I'm
like the
buying the
16E,
future.
right, would have
Yeah.
been the 25.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think I'm okay with it, but we'll see how it plays out. It what they need to do, and I know I've said this, I think I say this every year, but what they need to do is just not have so many versions of everything, right? So that consumers can keep it simple. I want the iPhone 26. I want the iPad 26 in size X, right? I don't, you and I have spoken about this before. It's no longer that simple thing of I want an iPad of one of these two sizes. I want an iPhone of one of the. It's so by simplifying the numbers, you've not simplified the actual problem. you you know.
Right. Do you think, okay, so this side side question, do you think we're going to see hints at, and because usually this is what happens, right? Is you kind of get hints of hardware. Do you think we'll get hints of a foldable phone in our Swift UI code?
I hope so. And the reason I say that is because I think to us, right, the developer community, we wouldn't be surprised. As far as we're concerned, it's a done deal at some point, right? So we won't be so shocked or surprised. It'll just be, there it is, you know. And sometimes I do wonder if companies, Apple in this case, put those little things in there for people to find to see what the reaction is, right? Okay, should we do that? Because, like we were saying earlier about everything else, if Apple does a foldable, it better be the Apple we used to know and love, where it's like you have made one better than everybody else, right? Because, along with that, they're going to charge more for it. No question, right? And so, yeah, and I would be I think that's the thing is like, would I use one? No, probably I probably wouldn't, because I love my iPhone 15. I went down from the Max to just the Pro, which I think for me was one of the best decisions. Was like, this is fantastic, this is what I should have done. So I don't want a foldable, but I think it'll be in there. I think we'll have traces of some mystery hardware that will clearly be the foldable. Just like we've said before, when they said stop focusing on actual physical screen sizes, you know. Yeah. What do you think? Do you think we're years away from it? Yeah, it's so hard, right? Because all the mock-ups that everybody does for these things is always like, the typical not thinking like Apple. Oh, let's just take two iPhones and sandwich them together, and we
Well,
flip them
Apple
open.
will either
You know.
figure out the crease problem or they'll work around the crease problem, which is kind of the Apple way, right? Where it's like,
Yeah,
oh, yeah, we can't have see through glasses. Let's put a screen on the outside to show your fake face. Or, oh, we can't get rid of the notch. So let's just make it an island and have a little widget at there. You know how Apple does
yeah,
stuff now.
yeah.
So, like, I feel like, okay, what are they going to do with the crease in a creative way that fixes
Right.
the problem?
Because I thought about this, and I was like, okay, yeah, I don't. I've just never liked this idea of a crease that's like a fold, that actual crease on the Samsung that where it
Have
is.
you looked at an actual foldable
I was going
phone?
to say, I've never actually physically held one. I have no doubt that it works really well, but it doesn't feel Apple-ish, right? I feel like they could, like, Apple would be if anyone could make a seamless screen that just looks like it snaps together, it would be them. But maybe they can make a dynamic island that runs all the way along that middle piece that's
Right.
thin,
Or something like that.
and because I was thinking the other day, I was like, okay, clearly I'm not Apple, but what's an Apple-ish way? And an Apple-ish way is have it fold the other way so that the screens are on the outside, and that crease could become a magic island that I can read when my phone is laying flat on the, like I get my notification on there. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I do know what you mean.
And Apple, if you thought of this already and that's what you're doing, I didn't steal the plans. And if you
No, they
haven't,
should pay you for
I was
coming
going to
up with
say, if they
it.
haven't thought of it, hey, give me a call, Yeah.
We'll put your phone number in the
Yeah,
bottom of
I'll
the
say
video.
if I just solved the problem, hey, it's all right. I'll just take 1% of anything, you know.
Did you? So you said you do some Android.
Yes.
Did
Yeah.
you watch any of Google I/O?
I didn't watch it, but I have read, and I gotta say, for me, I was like, ooh, Gaggle, cut that, yeah. Google, I think, may have a better year than Apple right now, but again, assuming they can deliver the magic, right? Whoever delivers the magic's going to get it. But certainly, it feels like all the right promises are there from Google, right? Love them or hate them, just like Apple. Right now, I'm kind of feel like Google, yeah, they're so smart to have their conference just before, right? Um, because they can say, even if they, accidentally now what Apple's going to announce, they can still say, well, we did it first, you know. Um, so I'm excited for what Google's doing this year. Yeah, for sure. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be a full-time Android developer. No offense to anybody, it's not my thing.
If you do want to be a full-time Android developer, use Skip Tools. That way you can build it in Swift. From a previous episode.
Aren't those guys great? They are doing such a phenomenal job. And I know folks that have used the skip tools, and of course, like you say, you've interviewed them, I've interviewed them. I really think that they have a great solution.
And I'm really excited to see now we have this Swift, what's it called? I think it's ecosystem. The ecosystem steering committee.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Because when I'm looking here, of course, the server one comes up, um, and then there's like this, it's a Swift, website working group and so on, Swift server and so on. Yeah, but I think that's another smart thing, right? Swift has not been pushed in in the sense of people realizing it's available for other platforms, like especially embedded stuff, right?
Yes.
Like
I don't
folks
know
like
if you follow
Giannis
the
and
Edge
that.
OS stuff
Yeah.
and things like that.
You know,
Yeah.
because hey, if I could write, and I often say this with the folks that I hang out with, if I could write Swift as my solution anywhere for anything, you better believe that's what I do. I just don't believe in having to jump through hoops to make it work, which is why those, you're saying about the skip tools. It's like, great,
Mhm.
you've solved my pain point. Well done.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to mention that we talked about version numbers is I am I feel like the yearly cycle is a weird, like, it's weird. I don't know how to put it, but like, I get it. It's a marketing thing, but at the same time, like, what, why? And like, what I also feel like we're pushing features sometimes that nobody wants. Um, and it's like just to like have something to show off for the new model, blah blah blah. And like, yeah, but you guys haven't fixed like all these issues on the previous OS. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think sort of two thoughts on that is, yeah, you're putting an undue pressure on yourself. Oh, it's that time of year again. People are going to expect new hardware. People are going to expect the new OSs in dub. Knowing that they won't be available, but also, like we said last year, they still had most of the year to get it right and didn't, for whatever reasons. But I think that this is also, gosh, I guess I got to say this is part of the other bigger problem. You have folks that are driving everything based on the money side of the equation, um, and you've created this artificial enterprise of once a year, twice a year, you do this, as opposed to ship it when it's ready, right? Which is what it used to be.
I mean, I think I think these versions need S years. Like, what happened? We had the iPhone S's. Like, we need like iOS what, like 18S or something like that, or 17S. I don't mean that literally, but I mean like we're doing these every year, and like we still have bugs in version 4 that haven't been fixed.
So, someone asked me the other day, what do I, what's the biggest thing you want this year? And it's the same answer I always give, which is, hey, I love those years when they just truthfully say, nothing major. It's a bug fix year. As developers, we're like, fantastic. Thank you so much. But I get it. To all the top level sweet folks.
Well, it's the marketing thing, right? Right. But you do lose customers if you don't fix bugs. That's the problem.
Because I think that's the thing is the competition has never been as fierce as it is now. And people, I think we have this, and maybe we don't want to go there in the conversation yet, in which case just say, but we're reaching a tipping point where things are now so expensive that you folks are now saying, you got to give me a reason to buy it, right? I'm not just going to get, but it's the new iPhone. Okay, take my money. It's the new iPad. Take my money, right? Now, because of lots of situations, it's why do I have to get it? And you've got to give me that new shiny. Even this thing of, it's got a better camera. I don't think it works as, to sell it like it used to, right? If you think about it, like content creators like you and myself, do we buy a new $1,100 camera every year? Okay, I'm sure some folks do, but I'm an avid photographer and I don't, and I think the average consumer now is like starting to realize how expensive these things are and what you get for it. So I don't think the yearly cycle necessarily works anymore. It does it, and in that sense, like you say, I agree. Give me an on-off cycle for bug fixes in software. I would be more inclined to buy hardware if you gave me a 2-year cycle. It wouldn't feel so bad, and I'd have paid off the other one.
I mean, it's like, how do I put this? Like, I think the iPhone, just there isn't going to be that much more innovation in the smartphone. It's just not going to happen, fold or not. Having said that, I do think it's not a device that's going to go away anytime soon. Like, I just don't, like, it's not like, I don't know, like, when the smartphone came out, I don't think sales of computers went down. I just think more people had access to technology with the smartphone. I don't, if somebody could correct me on that, feel free. But like, AI is not going to take away the smartphone. I'm sorry, Sam Altman and Johnny Ive. It's not going to happen. Like, um, having a screen, we want a screen. We want something we can look at, regardless of whether there's AI behind it or not.
Look at the iPod that was in theory a great idea with no screen, no controls, but maybe it was just way too ahead of its time in that. Yeah, but have you ever tried to use one?
Yeah,
With
right.
no controls. And yeah, I'm at this point, if you tried to get me to use anything that didn't have some kind of input system other than it relying on my weird accent voice, it's just not going to sell on me. It's just not going to happen. you know I think there was a joke someone said the other day about, well, they stopped the car project because you couldn't, it wasn't recognizing when someone said, please stop, turn left. But I agree with you, and I think the phone device is not going to go away. It is so right that it shouldn't go away, but
Right.
I recognize on the flip side, you only sell so many so often, and I haven't seen the latest numbers. I don't remember them. I'm sure Apple's doing just fine, but there will be a tipping point, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you change prices, and I
Right.
know we might touch on that, but
Yeah, let's go
you know,
for it. I mean, when you say cost of iPhone, are you talking specifically about tariffs or was there something else?
no, I was just talking in general. I try not to touch on anything close to politics. It's such a dangerous area, but anything that raises the price of the phone, even if it's just, Apple wants to raise the price, um, I think it's a dangerous gamble in that I don't think enough folks already have. Well, okay, let me put it this way. I think a lot of folks, it's like they when they buy the huge television, right? Oh, instead of a loaf of bread, hey, priorities, right? And so, do you need to spend 1,200, 1,300 plus on a phone every year? I'm sure there's
I
other
don't. Do you
things.
think people buy new phones every year still?
I think there's enough. Otherwise, they
Okay.
wouldn't keep this model working. For me, it's usually I won't entertain the idea for at least a couple of years. That's what I do. And even like I got a 15 and it's fantastic. I have no reason to change it. But I'm sure there are folks who are just, I want to have the latest one. There's enough of them, otherwise they would. It's kind of like those spam phone calls, and everyone
Right.
says, "How do people fall for this? Why do they keep doing this?" Well, because enough people do it that it's worth them to keep doing that. And I'm not saying the iPhone is spam, folks, before you write in. I'm just saying that whatever it is, there's always enough people to buy into the business model, otherwise the business model wouldn't exist, right? I think it's hurt the
I think
phone
it's
companies.
mostly people who are like have iPhone 11s and are
Yes.
upgrading. I don't think it's
Yeah.
people who are
Yeah.
like, I have the 14, I need the 15. Okay, I have the 15, now I need the like.
I
I think
agree.
that's much more the case at this
Yeah.
point
Yeah. And I think,
than
it's driven by the younger market, younger than ourselves, Leo, right? If we're
true.
truthful, you know, I wish I had that kind of disposable income, but then I'd probably be taking vacations if I could do that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Maybe they'll raise the cost of the iPhone. They've already raised the cost of the cheapest iPhone, obviously.
Hmm.
So that's kind of been the way they've done it. I mean, I think a bigger problem is the fact that all of them, 90% of their manufacturing or whatever is in China.
Oh, for
I
sure.
think that's the
Yeah.
elephant in the room
Yeah.
right now,
Yeah.
more so than the prices. And I think that's going to be one of the sticky situations Apple's probably going to be in for the next rest
And
of the decade,
yeah. And for
regardless of
I
politics.
was gonna say,
It's a bad situation.
yeah, remove any kind of politics from the equation. At the end of the day, it comes down to it's still the consumer that gets hurt in the
Right.
middle, right? Regardless of how you get there, whether a price increase is forced on you or they choose to, or any of these companies, or whatever the situation, it's going to be us that suffer, right? It always is, and I think that more than anything maybe would drive a slower rate of iPhone sales. I
Okay.
don't know. I think it definitely gets significantly worse when you talk about like whatever the plans are for the Vision Pro. you know, you couldn't convince enough people to spend 3K on this now. If the price of a phone goes up, surely at some point the price of everything else hardware is going to go up as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And on that note, now that I think about it, okay, it will affect me when it comes to Macs, because we're pretty regular upgrading our Macs, right? I got the M4, I love it, but by the time the
What kind of
M6,
M4 did you get?
I got the M4 Pro Mac Mini.
I really want to
It's
get a Mac Mini.
and not to sales pitch it, but oh my god, it's so good. Um, I got the 64 gig version, or whatever it is, 48, whatever that top number was. I got
Okay.
that one in the Pro with a 1 terabyte drive inside, and I'm using the externals.
That's
Um,
awesome.
oh, I mean, it's another thing. It's like the phones, right? I have no reason to change this thing anytime soon. For what we do as developers and content creators, Xcode will always take some time to compile. Um,
Right.
I could jokingly say it reloads Xcode a lot quicker when it crashes. um, but, rendering video and things like that, it's
It's
going to
probably
keep me
amazing.
going for years, right?
Yeah.
And that,
Same here with my M1 Studio.
yeah, there you go. The M1's. So imagine an M4 Studio, right? You're not
Yeah.
going to need. You might want to replace that thing every couple of years, but in your heart, you don't need to, right? And
Hmm.
I feel that that's the same problem as with the phone and everything else. You nailed it when you said from a hardware perspective, these things are now so mature that we're not. You and I are old enough to remember the early days of like, I got a 66 megahertz Intel chip. Whoa,
Pre SSDs,
yeah.
pre
I mean,
LC, like
you know,
CRT monitors. Yeah, we've
exactly.
come a long way.
We're like, oh my gosh, what we have now, right? But that goes back to, like you said, with that phone in my pocket. I got more power in my pocket than I ever dreamed I would.
Right.
You know.
Let's see what else we got. What are we going to see with Vision Pro? Like, where can they possibly go with that device? You didn't get one, did you?
I didn't.
Okay. Have you tried the demo?
I have not tried the demo. Here's the reason why. I'll be completely transparent with the audience. Although anybody that knows me, they're like, yeah, we know why. Because I know if I try one, that's it.
Oh, you really?
I'm like, I'm done. Take my money, right?
Wow.
And so
okay.
that's why I haven't, because I know the benefits. For me, the huge benefit would be the one that a lot of folks mention. Like Tim Mitra, for example, is always saying about the huge desktop. Yeah. Oh my gosh, if I had that, I mean, I'd be set. But I also know that enough people say about the weight. It's like, oh, that's why I don't have one, right?
Right.
Not to mention that I can't justify the cost. But I did say to myself, oh, V2 might be a thing. But I think part of the question maybe you're asking is, there will be a V2, right?
Right. Or what are they going to do with the V2 to actually sell it? I mean, the big part of the problem, obviously, is that the developers did not flock to it like they thought they would. And I mean, there's 1,000 paper. I feel like with that product, what pushes me away is, besides the lack of apps, is the thousands of paper cuts. I feel like I'd use it and be like, oh, but this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem. It's just like, after a while, I'm just going to be like, I don't want to use this. And we've heard reports of people who've owned them and just left them in their drawer because they're just like, I'm sick and tired of dealing with it.
I'd love to know the percentage of people, and I hope it's low, that if they're honest, they said, I'm still using it to feel like I got my money's worth out of it. Right. And I know
sad.
Because I know there are folks that use it to watch, essentially like an infinite big screen. And I bet that's amazing. That's another reason why, like if I was to see the latest Mission Impossible on one of those and my whole room is the screen, I'm gonna feel like it's the best thing I ever bought, right? I'm not gonna deny it.
Yeah, exactly.
So there is that, but I also know, like, Jeff, the co-host on the Compulsive podcast, he has one. But I lived through his experience of spending a long time crafting his app. Shout out to Jeff, by the way, buddy. Watched him spending a long time making his app work exceptionally well on the Vision OS, and then after a while saying, "How's that going?" And it's like, "What? Why did I bother?" And I get it.
So does he have a Vision Pro?
He does. Yes.
Does he use it?
He says he does. Yeah. And I believe him.
What does he use it for? Does he say?
Well, that was the thing. I didn't, it's like, okay, I'll believe you. I won't ask too many questions.
Okay, fair enough.
But we would, we'll have you come on the podcast again soon. You can ask him. Because I feel like there would be a great conversation between the two of you about the Vision Pro.
I'd just be curious. Like, yeah.
But he does. I think, for him, not to speak on his behalf, but obviously as a developer, he spent a lot of time with his app and felt like, wow, what a waste of time that was,
Really?
Yeah. And again, folks, I'm just interpreting what he said. I'm not speaking on his behalf, but it wasn't worth the development time. And he's not the only one I've heard that from. And I think, like you're saying, that's kind of been the thing. And the, to touch on it, the death by 1,000 cuts. Yeah. I mean, as we know with all Apple devices, right? Let's be honest. Whether Apple likes it or not, it's the third-party apps that make or break it. It made the iPhone, right? Not to say that the iPhone's not a fantastic phone, but it didn't really become useful to like myself until like, great, now I got apps on it, right? And that's what the Vision Pro clearly needs as well. But I don't blame developers if they took the stance of, you know what, Apple, we all know you don't like us developers. You really never give us the attention because we don't put the money in your pocket in that sense. I would argue with so many, yes, we do, because look at the
Right.
App Store,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And Apple makes a huge amount of money from services. That's a whole other conversation. But why would I help Apple when I feel like they're not really doing a whole lot to help me, except just line their pockets with my hard work? You know what I mean?
Right.
Um,
Right. And yeah,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think
like
you
I
said it.
couldn't. There's no way I could convince anybody I know, even diehard developers, go spend the $3,000 on a Vision Pro.
Right.
But their
Or
response
like,
would be like
go ahead.
mine. I'd rather have spent $3,000 on a phenomenal Mac Mini, which is kind of what I did,
Right. Exactly.
and love this thing for years. The Vision Pro is a V1. Assuming that's still the plan, it'll be redundant at some point this year or next year, but my Mac Mini lives on, right?
Right. Right. Exactly. I mean, that's the way I would look at it. I'd rather spend money on a Mac than on a
Yeah,
Vision Pro because I know I'd use it
yeah,
pretty solidly.
yeah. Or for that matter, the like we say, that's two plus iPhones, right?
Right. Right. Exactly.
And I know for yourself, and like in my household, we are two plus iPhone families, right? Most people are, I think, at this point. If you've got
Right.
one, you've got more than one. And
Right.
so, great. I'll upgrade all of those this year. Love that to death. And not all have to sit in the living room with headsets on, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. So last thing I had, do you want to talk if do you think we're going to see changes to the App Store at DubDub
This is
because of,
arguably,
you know, legal stuff?
yeah, I was going to say, this is one of the more, I think, interesting areas, right? We've seen so many changes, like we've said about so many things, right? Over the last year, we've seen so many changes, many of which Europe, no question, have forced the issue. Putting aside whether I feel that's right or wrong, there have been changes, and there will be more changes because once you open that door, you don't close it again, right? Um, the US, I think, has had it better, and some other countries that are not Europe are still. I say locked in the sense that they are locked in on these platforms, um, but I also think if, let's say, the situation arose in, say, let's say, take the Asian and US markets, right? If they were to suddenly be forced to open up third party app stores, I don't think it would be a good idea. It wouldn't be a good experience. It, for better or worse, and you know me, the audience knows me. I'm all for, hey, fair competition is a good thing, right? But I also think security and privacy is more important. Now, I get it. You could argue that, okay, privacy wise, Apple still has my data, and they might be the nice people in the room right now. We don't know that that's it in the future. I'm not claiming it is, but um, but I do value not having to worry that if an app makes it on my phone or my iPad, and I'm not including the Mac very specifically there. If it makes it on my iPhone or my iPad, there's a better than average chance I'm good. Yes, there are still some problems. Things get through, but it's as someone who works on multiple platforms as a job, I can honestly say, it is infinitely worse on Android. Um, yeah, and you know, I had an Android phone, and I wanted to really love it because, like, the one of the test phones I've got now is a Samsung, and it's beautiful. The screen, the curve, I mean, it's just fantastic. It's like if I didn't have an iPhone, this is what I'd have, right? But then I think about the app stores, and then I think about Android platform and that. So yeah, there will be changes to the app stores. Um, I think it's gonna. Apple will always claim it's gonna hurt them, right? You're cutting off. We're bleeding to death. Okay, Apple, quit it. No one's gonna believe that you're bleeding to death anytime soon, right? But they do have a good argument. Hey, this way the users feel more confident. I can't argue with that. I think that's a valid argument right there. But what do you think? You think from like a app builder's perspective, do you think it'll get better or worse for us?
I think most I think most people are going to stick with Apple. I so I guess as somebody who only is on Apple, I would say like I don't trust the App Store as a consumer. Um I just think there's a lot of sketchy apps on the App Store, so I don't even feel like I'm paying for decent security. It sounds like you have more experience on Android, so maybe I'm mistaken. So maybe we could get more premium app stores that like are better quality apps and stuff. I don't know. But yeah, it's kind of an unfortunate situation we're in and how we got here as far as like they've been pressed and pressed and pressed and have just they just continue to squeeze and think they can get more out of it. And I think the iPhone's been hurt by it, honestly.
Oh, absolutely, I do. And I do say that I think for many different reasons, like you said, death by a thousand cuts. You know, I jokingly say it, but I also believe too. You know, welcome to Microsoft of the '90s, folks. Right? You once you dominate a market, it's not the question of whether you earned that success or not, because hey, I think they did. I think Apple deserves everything they got because they came up with this solutions to problems we didn't know we had, but when we realized we did, wow, did it turn the world around for everybody, right? Yes, of course, I'm specifically talking about the iPhone here, right? And not I'm not talking about whether I think it's right or wrong. It did turn everything around for everybody, right? Not everybody had a cell phone back when they were, super simple phones. Everybody, most people do now. And so it's opened up people around the world to the world, which is nothing but a good thing. But with that, inevitably becomes okay, but now you think that we should just accept everything you do, and that's acceptable to a certain point until they, in this case, Apple, and that's why I say welcome to Microsoft of the '90s, until you start to abuse that and you start to, Apple's always believed its own hype, but now it really believes it's a reality. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I kind of like, I don't know, I'm a bit cynical about it just because from what I've seen, the apps that are the big ones on the App Store tend to be doom scrolling video apps or like gambling apps. And that's like all I see um, as far as what are the big hits. So it's like, great, you've got addictive apps, but like at the same time, like what happened to the really I don't know, maybe it's just the market has changed. But it just seems like those are the hits and like your productivity app or I don't know, like more creative games seem to be getting squeezed out of the market.
I think I put a lot of that blame on, frankly, the unpredictable nature of App Store review. Um, if I'm not saying, and to be clear, I'm not saying, oh, if we've got, let's just pick one. If we've got 10 Tetris clones, that is all that should be allowed on the store, is we have got the maximum amount of Tetris clones, right?
Right.
I'm not saying that because the 11th one could be groundbreakingly pivotal in some way. But what I am saying is it doesn't feel like the rules for the App Store, and I know we as developers, I know I'm sort of preaching to the choir. The rules seem to apply one way for some folks, one way for another set of folks. And then uh, we can't help but touch upon this. If you're one of those companies that Apple's decided they've got a beef with you, it's a
Right.
third set of rules, and we will make out that to let you in will just kill Apple as a company, of which none of us believe it, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. What like I do think that the biggest problem is just the financial structure of how the App Store was set up. This is what we've ended up with, where we have games looking for whales and things like that more than anything else. And I think that's really like where the problem has reared its head. And like you said, App Store review, etc. It's like, and it's to Apple's advantage, right? That they make a ton of money off of games. So
I'm one of those folks that I think Apple deserves a percentage of sales because they are doing an awful lot for us, even if it doesn't feel like it. Anyone like us who's ever put an app in the App Store suddenly appreciates I had to do zero clever marketing to have a nice page in the App Store. I got these other, there are so many useful things. They deserve something for that. They're hosting this stuff. I mean, I think they, what does that percentage? What should it be? I don't know, but they deserve something. But they don't. If if I'm giving them something, they shouldn't be able to dictate all the rules to me, right? As a someone putting an app in, I should follow the guidelines that I agreed to and laid out, and they should be clear for me to understand, so that if you accept it or reject it, it's like, okay, I get it. I pushed too far, right? Look at the amount of, you said it yourself, look at the amount of adverts that you see for things, famously certain games that didn't exist that appeared in adverts, and then like, hey, we actually made a game of this now, right? That is Apple's fault because they're the gatekeepers of what gets in and what gets out. That's why they tell us their monopoly is a good thing, and yet they don't demonstrate using that monopoly for the right reasons
and also
to.
like I'm agreeing. Like I think I don't care about the 30% cut, whatever it is.
Yeah,
Like
right. It's like arguing about the $90 or whatever it is, $99 a year to be in the developer program.
right.
Hey, if you're not making $99 a year, I'll be transparent, right? I have a full-time day job. I don't make enough from the App Store to cover my yearly developer uh, cost, but that's not why I'm doing it, right?
Right. Right.
But if I was doing it, I would take it serious enough that $90 or $100 wouldn't bother me, because I would feel like at that point I'm doing something wrong.
So before we close out, I wanted to ask you, what have you been working on lately?
Yeah, so over the past year in particular, I have been doing a lot more game development. For those of you keeping check out there, I actually did release like my Endless Hurdles game, which was just a fun, hey, could we make Sprite Kit work? That then ended up as oh, dang, we got a real game. Um, I finally released it. I moved away from Sprite Kit. Um, uh, and went into like Godot. So I did finally release it on multiple platforms because everybody wanted me to. So thanks, peer pressure. But I have been doing a lot of game development because it's my, when you do mobile apps every day as a job, at some point you're like, I don't want to do mobile app in the evening necessarily every night. So I do game development because I'm free to do whatever I want, and it doesn't matter if I ship it on.
So you're talking about Godot and Sprite Kit. Explain to me the differences between the two.
For those, Sprite Kit is I call it Apple's gaming 2D technology,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then of course there's various other ones for 3D. And funny enough, everybody kept pushing me like, you should make this for Vision Pro. And I'm like, what's the point? just to circle it back. But it's their 2D gaming technology, and it is a lot harder to work with than it should be because it's not a game engine. It is more, hey, if you want to make a game engine with it, you can. So you've got to do all that work, right? But if you look at others, like, there are three that I use: Godot, Unity, and Unreal Engine. They are pre-built engines. I just have to go make my thing, right?
Okay.
And interestingly, doing Godot has made me learn GD script, which is
Okay.
very close to like working with Ruby and things like that.
Okay.
And so it's like, in fact, Jeff and I did a Compile Swift episode recently where we were talking about you go do something else and you find it has side benefits to your mainstream work, right? And so that's what happened there. Not SpriteKit turned out not to be my thing because it was taking too long to do basic things, and that's a whole other subject about how Apple's not embracing gaming platforms the way they would like you to think they are.
Yeah.
I'll say it. I say it every time. So apologies. Apple, just buy Unity already and make Swift the main programming language, and I will back you 1,000%.
So Godot is a different engine,
A completely different engine, open
but
source.
you can use Swift in it.
You can. It's not the main language, but there are some very smart folks out there. I'll find the link. We'll put the link in the show notes. There's you can use Swift by way of a bridge, and the co-host again on Compulsive Podcast, Jeff, he actually embraced this, and I tried to embrace it, but it got to that thing of I was doing too much work to get Swift working before I actually made anything. And that to me
Okay.
is always the sign that something's wrong, right?
Okay.
It's really good. It's coming along in leaps and bounds. There have been conference talks about it. Apologies, I can't remember the gentleman's name offhand who did it. We'll find it for the links. It's not terrible. It's really good. And in fact, there's also a good an iPad app now that you can use to make Godot
Oh, that's very
games,
cool.
which is like great. You mean I can code them on the iPad? Interesting. Not really something I want, but interesting nonetheless. But that's what I want to see. I want to see Swift taken seriously in these other arenas, right? Game development in particular, because I can type Swift a lot quicker than learning another language, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
that's what I've been working on a lot lately. I still have apps. I've got like my Job Finder Tracker app, which is Swift and Swift Data, and
What
all
platform?
it's on iOS. iOS is the primary platform for it.
Okay.
I do want to make it multi-platform, meaning a better iPad experience, true native iPad experience, and Mac at some point. I just don't feel it has the core features yet that it needs to have, and
Right.
so it's kind of that thing of, okay, let's get one platform right.
Yeah.
Now do the interfaces for the others, because it uses CloudKit and everything else, so your data goes everywhere, but it's just not the experience I want it to be yet.
Yep. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I will say I haven't migrated it to Swift 6 because I'm a little afraid.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah. Reasonably so. I agree.
Yeah.
Peter, thank you so much for coming on. Sorry you won't be in California this year, but one of these years we'll have to get you out.
I almost made it to Deep Dish this year, except for last minute work commitments. Almost made it. But yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, Leo. We will make it, buddy. We will make it and be in the same location at some point. It will happen. That would be fantastic. But as always, thank you for having me back on the show. It's always a pleasure. We always have so much to talk about when we get together, and just thoroughly enjoy it. It's always interesting. So thank you.
And we'll put links to you and your Compile Swift stuff and live streams, etc., in the show notes. So be sure to check that out. Like I said, I will be doing a special recording Monday, June 9th, to talk about the events of the first day at Dub special 200th episode at Community Kit. I'll have a link to reserve your spot. You do have to reserve your spot. It's free. So go check that out. I'll be doing a panel at One More Thing on Tuesday. I'm going to be showcasing Bushel at the Indie Fair at Community Kit. So definitely check that out. Bushel is going to be on sale till the 23rd. So we just released Bushel 2.10, 2.10. So check that out. We added a menu bar. We redid the snapshot interface. It's really great. So if you're going to test out Mac OS 26, you'll definitely want to grab a copy of Bushel and give it a try, and then you get 50% off if you subscribe for the yearly subscription. So take a look at that. I'll have links to all that stuff in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and post a review in your podcast player. Consider joining our Patreon to get these episodes early, and also subscribe to our newsletter. All right, that's it. We'll see you, everybody, in California. Talk to you later. Bye.